This is for my 5 savvy subscribers whom I hope will be able to make use of this information, or at least understand it. I will start by reading a short excerpt from an interview of a not a Soviet defector, but actually intelligence officer from Romania. Of course, I can't pronounce his name. But then at the end, I will state what appears to be, at first hearing, a totally unrelated conclusion. But for 15 years of my other life at the top of the Soviet bloc intelligence community, I was involved in a worldwide disinformation effort aimed at diverting attention away from the KGB's involvement with Lee Harvey Oswald, the American Marine who had defected to Moscow, returned to the U.S., and killed President Kennedy. We launched rumors, published articles, and even produced books insinuating that the culprits were in the U.S., not in the Soviet Union. Our ultimate proof, quote-unquote, was a note addressed to, quote, Mr. Hunt, dated November 8, 1963, and signed by Oswald, copies of which turned up in the U.S. in 1975. We knew the note was faked, but American graphological experts certified that it was genuine, and conspiracy theorists connected it to the CIA's E. Howard Hunt, by then well known from the Watergate affair, and used it to prove, quote-unquote, that the CIA was implicated in the Kennedy assassination. Original KGB documents in the Matrokin archive, brought to light in the 1990s, finally proved that the note was forged by the KGB during the Watergate scandal. The forged note was twice checked for authenticity by the KGB's Technical Operations Directorate and approved for use. In 1975, the KGB mailed 3 photocopies of the note from Mexico to conspiracy buffs in the United States. After the Soviet Union collapsed, I hoped the new leaders in Moscow might reveal the KGB hand in the Kennedy assassination. Instead, in 1993, they published Passport to Assassination, the never-before-told story of Lee Harvey Oswald by the KGB colonel who knew him. This is a book claiming that a thorough investigation into Oswald had found no Soviet involvement with him whatsoever. Hangmen do not incriminate themselves, says Mr. Pasipa. In the 1990s, retired KGB officer Vasily Matrokin, helped by the British M16 or MI6, smuggled 25,000 pages of highly confidential KGB documents out of Moscow. They represent a minuscule part of the KGB archives, estimated to be some 27 billion pages. The East German Stasi archive had 3 billion. Nevertheless, the FBI described the Matrokin archive as, quote, the most complete and extensive intelligence ever received from any source, unquote. According to this archive, the first American book on the assassination, entitled Oswald, Assassin or Fall Guy, which blames the CIA and the FBI for the crime, was masterminded by the KGB. Front Page Magazine says, quote, the Warren Commission and the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that Oswald had no connection whatsoever with the KGB. But according to your book, Oswald secretly met an officer of the KGB assassination department in Mexico City just a few weeks before shooting President Kennedy. What's the evidence? Pasipa answers, there are many bits of evidence proving Oswald's connection with the KGB. A tangible one is the letter he sent to the Soviet embassy in Washington a few days after meeting Comrade Kostin in Mexico City. Elsewhere, Oswald identified the person he had met there as Comrade Kostikov. The CIA has identified Valery Kostikov as an officer of the PGU's 13th Department, which was involved with assassinations. A handwritten draft of that letter was found among Oswald's effects after the assassination. The previously mentioned Ruth Payne testified that Oswald rewrote that letter several times before typing it on her typewriter. Marina stated that he retyped the envelope 10 times. It was important to him. A photocopy of the final letter Oswald sent to the Soviet embassy was recovered by the Warren Commission. The point I would like to make is that the Soviets were quite intent on committing various acts of espionage, including assassination. Is it beyond their ability and their imagination to incite the conflict that we are now seeing developing between Europeans and the recent immigrants from the Middle East? I suspect that the Arabs are being incited, instigated, and frightened by the Soviets. I'm going to call them Soviets for lack of a better word, because that's probably who they still are. I believe this conflict could well be contrived, manufactured, created by the communists. And they're going to pit Europeans against Arabs in a proxy war, much as they have pitted the so-called Palestinians against Israel.